On a Tuesday afternoon, just 4 days shy of Mother's Day, I got a text from Victoria. I was in my kitchen, fussing with some flowers I'd snipped from my backyard garden, trying to make them look halfway decent. My phone pinged, and when I saw her name, my gut twisted like it always did. Her message said Elizabeth, James, and she wanted to keep Mother's Day small this year, just the closest family. She hoped I'd get it. I stared at that text, reading it over twice, my hands shaking a bit. Immediate family. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. Even after 6 years of being my son's wife, Victoria still didn't count me as close family. I put the phone down and grabbed the counter, taking deep breaths to calm myself. For 4 years, I'd been sending them $700 a month to help with their mortgage, stretching my retirement savings to the breaking point. I'd done it happily, wanting James to have the solid start I'd always dreamed of for him. Then my phone rang. James. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice tight, like he was tiptoeing around Victoria nearby. "You see Victoria's text?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Just curious what immediate family means if it doesn't include your own mom." There was a pause. I heard him muffle the phone, probably talking to Victoria. When he came back, he sounded more resolute. "Victoria's folks are coming over. We figured it'd be nice to just have the 4 of us this time." The sting of that betrayal hit harder than I was ready for. Got it. So her parents are immediate family, but I'm not. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be," James said with a sigh. "Victoria thinks, and I agree, it's better this way. Things have been a little strained between you two lately." Strained. That's a nice way to put how Victoria rolls her eyes every time I open my mouth, or how she forgets to include me in family emails, or the little digs about my clothes, my hair, or whatever I think. "Still need that mortgage check this month?" The words slipped out before I could catch them. "Yeah, of course," James shot back, quick as anything. "Why wouldn't we?" I shut my eyes, feeling something crack deep inside. "Just making sure. I'll send it tomorrow." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the check I'd already filled out. 4 years of checks. 4 years of inviting them over for Sunday dinners they barely showed up to. 4 years of birthday and Christmas gifts that got a half-hearted "thanks" text. 4 years of watching Victoria chip away at my place in my son's life. That night, another text from Victoria popped up. She said they were doing a big Mother's Day thing with her mom and hoped I wasn't too bent out of shape about their choice. She and James just felt more at ease this way. Apparently, I could be a bit much sometimes. A bit much. That phrase stuck in my head as tears stung my eyes. Was it too much to love your kid? To want to be part of his world? I picked up the mortgage check, running my thumb along its edge. Then, like a fog lifting, I felt a clarity I hadn't had in years. I ripped the check in half, then into smaller pieces, and fed them into my shredder, watching them vanish. My hands were shaking, but not from hurt, from a new kind of strength. If I wasn't family enough for Mother's Day, maybe I wasn't family enough to keep paying their bills. The next morning, I called the bank and stopped the automatic payment I'd set up. The lady on the phone asked if something was wrong. "Nope," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in ages. "Just time for a change." When I hung up, I felt this weird mix of guilt and freedom. For the first time in forever, I'd put myself first. The constant struggle to win Victoria's approval, the pretending her little jabs didn't cut, all that weight just fell away. I knew there'd be fallout. James would lose it. Victoria would have another excuse to call me the problem mother-in-law. But looking at the empty spot where that check used to be, I knew I couldn't keep bankrolling my own rejection. On Mother's Day, 4 days later, I switched off my phone and spent the day planting new flowers in my garden. With every seed I pressed into the dirt, I made a vow to myself: no more making myself small, no more saying sorry for being here, no more footing the bill for folks who didn't value me. I had no idea that by the time the sun went down, my quiet stand for myself would kick off a storm that'd shake our family to its core. Monday morning, The first call came at 8:15. I was sipping coffee on my porch when James's name lit up my phone. I let it ring. 15 minutes later, he tried again. By the third call, I knew I couldn't dodge the fight forever. "Hey, James," I said, keeping my voice even. "Mom, what the heck?" he snapped, barely holding back his anger. "The bank called. They said the mortgage payment didn't go through." "Did you cancel the check?" I took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "Yeah, I did." "What? Why would you?" He cut off, and I heard muffled voices, Victoria, no doubt, in the background. When he came back, his tone was colder. "Is this about Mother's Day? Are you really being that spiteful?" His words stung, but I stood my ground. "This isn't about spite, James. It's about respect. For 4 years, I've shelled out over $60,000 to help with your mortgage while Victoria's been slowly cutting me out of your life." "That's not right," James fired back. "Victoria's not trying to." "Hold up, James," I cut in, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Your wife texted me that I wasn't welcome on Mother's Day because I'm too much. She invited her folks instead. If I don't count as family for a day like that, maybe I don't count as family enough to keep covering your mortgage." For a second, there was just silence on the line, then he spoke, his voice quieter. "I'm really let down, Mom. I never figured you'd use money to try and control us." Those words hit me like a slap. Control? You think that's what I've been doing all these years, helping you out? Victoria says. "I don't give a damn what Victoria says anymore," I blurted out, the words spilling before I could rein them in. "I care about what you think, James. What's your take on shutting your own mom out of Mother's Day?" Another pause. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said. "It was just one day, Mom." "It's not just one day," I said, my voice cracking a bit. "It's a whole pattern, and I'm done paying for the privilege of being left out." I hung up before he could say anything else, my hands shaking as I set the phone down. The calm morning I'd hoped for was gone, but I didn't second-guess my choice. By midday, my phone started lighting up with texts. "Victoria, real classy. Elizabeth, weaponizing money just shows why we needed distance from you." "James, Mom, call me back, please. We gotta sort this out." I ignored them all. Instead, I threw myself into gardening, hoping the steady work of digging and planting would settle my nerves, but peace stayed just out of reach. Around 2:30, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole and saw James and Victoria on my porch, both looking mad enough to spit nails. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "We need to have a word," James said, pushing past me without waiting for an invite. Victoria trailed behind, her eyes sweeping over my living room with that barely hidden sneer of hers. "Yep, we sure do," I said, shutting the door and turning to face them. "You guys want some coffee or something?" "We're not here for coffee," Victoria snapped. "We want answers, and we want you to clean up this mess you've made." I looked at my son, searching his face for a glimpse of the kid I raised, the one who'd hand me dandelions and call them a bouquet, who clung to me at his dad's funeral and swore we'd always look out for each other. All I saw was a man who wouldn't meet my gaze. "I've already laid it out," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I'm not gonna keep bankrolling folks who don't show me basic respect." "This isn't about respect," Victoria's voice climbed. "This is you trying to run our lives. You've always wanted to keep James under your thumb, and you can't handle that he's got me now." "That's nonsense," I said, holding my voice steady even as anger bubbled up. "I've never tried to control either of you. All I've ever wanted is to be treated with a little decency and included. You call butting into our business and judging everything I do decency?" Victoria shot back. I blinked, thrown off. "When have I ever judged you, Victoria? You do it constantly. The way you eyeball our house, the questions about our money, those little remarks about my cooking." "I've never said a single bad thing about your cooking," I pushed back. "You don't need to say it. It's in your face," the way you poke at your plate." I turned to James, hoping he'd see how ridiculous this was. "James, you know that's not true." He squirmed, looking uneasy. "Mom, you can come off as critical sometimes." "Maybe not outright, but," he trailed off, and a cold feeling settled over me. This was Victoria's work, twisting everything I did, spinning my words until even my own son saw me as the bad guy in their story. "I think it's time for you both to go," I said softly. "Not until you agree to put the mortgage payment back," Victoria demanded. I looked at her, really looked, and it all clicked. The sly manipulation, the way she'd wedged herself between me and James, the careful plan to cut me out of his life. "No," I said, the word heavy with years of biting my tongue. "My answer's no." "You're gonna regret this," Victoria hissed, snatching her purse. "Let's go, James. She's made her call." James hesitated, looking caught. "Mom, come on. We can figure this out." "We can," I said. "But not like this. Not with ultimatums and finger-pointing." "All right, fine," he muttered after a long pause, his shoulders sagging like he'd just lost a fight. "Do whatever you want." When they stormed out, the door banging shut behind them, I didn't break down. Instead, this weird, steady calm washed over me, like I'd just weathered a storm. The worst had gone down, my boy picked his wife over his old man, and somehow, I was still standing. What I couldn't see coming was that the real fight was just kicking off. That night, my phone pinged with a notification. My sister had tagged me in a Facebook post. Hands shaking, I pulled it up and saw a long rant from Victoria, claiming I'd ditched my son when he needed me most, accusing me of using cash to pull his strings, and saying I'd always been envious of their marriage. The family drama had just spilled onto the internet for all to see. By the time the week wrapped up, my phone was blowing up, 42 missed calls, 75 texts, and a flood of social media alerts I couldn't keep up with. Victoria's post had spread like gossip at a family reunion, with cousins and aunts picking sides without even asking for my take. I had to mute my notifications, too overwhelmed by the constant shade being thrown my way. My sister Margaret was the only one who bothered to get my side of the story. "This ain't like you, Tom," she said over the phone. "What's the real deal here?" I laid it all out for her, and she let out a heavy sigh. I always got a weird vibe from Victoria. Too slick, too put together, you know. "How's James missing this?" I asked, my voice cracking a bit. "He's always been sharp about people." "Love can mess with your head," Margaret said plainly. "And folks like Victoria? They're pros at cutting people off from their roots. It's like something out of a psychology book." Her words stuck with me as I tried to keep my days normal. Textbook manipulation. Had that been the game all along, right under my nose? Come Friday morning, I was up in the attic, digging through old boxes, photo albums, Christmas cards, even emails I'd printed out years ago. I spread them out across the living room floor, piecing together a timeline of me, James, and Victoria. The shift was sneaky but clear as day now. When they first started dating, James would ring me up a few times a week. We'd have Sunday dinners like clockwork. He'd bring Victoria to family barbecues, and while she wasn't exactly friendly, she played nice enough. Then they got engaged. The calls started drying up. Sunday dinners went from every week to every couple of months, then just holidays if I was lucky. James started bailing on plans at the last second. I found a Christmas card from 4 years back, the first one after their wedding. "Dad, we're so lucky to have you in our corner. Love always, James and Victoria." That same year, they hit me up for help with their mortgage, saying they were scraping by. I dug into my bank records next. The mortgage help, $700 a month, every month. But that wasn't all. I'd chipped in for their car insurance, covered some home repairs, even paid their property taxes a couple years ago when they said they were strapped. Meanwhile, Victoria was posting photos of their fancy new couch, weekend trips to the coast, and designer outfits she had to have. I'd seen those posts and felt a knot in my gut, but I brushed it off. They were young, living it up. I wanted James to have the stuff I couldn't afford for him when I was raising him solo. Now, staring at it all laid out like a map, I saw a pattern I couldn't unsee. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of it. Unknown number. Against my better sense, I picked up. Tom, it's Sophie, Victoria's sister. I froze. I'd only met Sophie a few times at family get-togethers. She always seemed kinda uneasy around Victoria, hanging back from the chatter. Sophie, I said slowly, how'd you get my number? From an old contact list James had. Listen, I don't have long, but I saw that Facebook post from Victoria, and I couldn't just sit quiet. Something in her tone, maybe a hint of nerves, made me lean in. What are you getting at? Victoria's pulled this kind of stunt before, Sophie said, her words tumbling out fast. With our stepdad. She convinced our mom he was controlling, always tearing her down. Mom ended up kicking him out, and it broke our family to pieces. I dropped onto the couch, my heart thumping hard. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've watched her do this, cutting people off, twisting what they say, spinning lies to fit her story, then milking them for whatever she can, money or otherwise, until she's done with them. My brain flashed back to all the little digs, the way Victoria would reword something I said to James, turning a harmless question into some kind of attack. There's more, Sophie went on, her voice dropping low, almost a whisper. If you can, check James's email. 4 months back, Victoria was supposedly planning a surprise anniversary party for you and him. James asked me to pitch in, but then it got scrapped out of nowhere. Victoria told everyone you said no, that you were too busy for it. My throat went tight. I never got any invite. I know, she said. There wasn't one. Victoria made it all up. Told James she called you, said you didn't want to celebrate with them. My eyes stung with tears as the puzzle pieces started clicking together. Missed invites, conversations that got twisted, moments when James seemed upset over stuff I supposedly said or did. Why is she doing this? I asked, though deep down, I had a hunch about the answer. Power, Sophie said flat out. And your wallet. James let it slip once that you've been helping with their mortgage. That true? Yeah, I confessed, going on 4 years now. That tracks. Victoria's always hunting for a paycheck. She pulled the same move with our stepdad, constantly asking for cash, then spinning it to our mom like he was using the money to control her. We kept talking for another 15 minutes, Sophie filling in the blanks of the story I'd been trying to unravel. When we hung up, I sat there, surrounded by the scattered proof of years of her scheming, my head spinning. I didn't stop that mortgage payment out of spite or to get even. Some part of me had been picking up on this for a while and finally hit its limit. My phone pinged with a text from James. Dad, we gotta talk. Just us, no one else, please. I stared at the message, a mix of hope and worry churning in my gut. Was he starting to see through the fog, or was this another setup cooked up by Victoria? Either way, I couldn't just brush it off. This was my boy, the kid I raised on my own, the guy who used to look at me with nothing but trust and admiration. Tomorrow, I texted back. My place, 1 p.m. As I hit send, I started rounding up the evidence spread across the floor. Come tomorrow, James was gonna hear the real story, whether he was ready to face it or not. Right at 1:05 p.m., James's car rolled into my driveway. I watched from the window as he sat there a moment, his head pressed against the steering wheel like he was carrying the weight of the world. When he finally got out, his shoulders were slumped, his steps cautious, not at all like the self-assured kid I brought up. I swung the door open before he could knock. Come on in, I said, stepping to the side. James hesitated at the doorway, his eyes sweeping over the living room where I'd laid out the proof of Victoria's games, photos, bank statements, printed out texts, all arranged in order by date. What's all this stuff? He asked, his voice so quiet I barely heard him. The truth, I said simply. Take a seat, son. He sank onto the couch, looking like a stranger in the house he grew up in. I noticed the bags under his eyes, the wrinkled shirt, clear signs he wasn't sleeping right. You want some coffee? I asked, leaning on old habits to cut through the awkwardness. He shook his head. Dad, I need to know why you pulled the plug on the mortgage help. We're in a tight spot. The bank's breathing down our necks. Are you really in a bind, James? I cut in, keeping my tone soft but steady. I handed him a folder stuffed with their social media posts from the past 4 months. 'Cause Victoria's Instagram says you guys just had a weekend in Tahoe. Bought new bedroom furniture. She's got a couple of fancy new purses. He leafed through the printouts, his forehead creasing. Those were one-off things. The trip was for work. The furniture was a steal, and I passed him my bank records. For years of mortgage payments, house repairs, property taxes, car insurance, all while you two were supposedly scraping by. James set the papers down, dragging a hand through his hair. It's not like that. We were gonna pay you back down the line. This ain't about getting paid back, I said, a knot forming in my throat. It's about respect, James. About being treated like your dad, not a cash machine. His eyes flared with frustration. That's not how it is. We've always been grateful. Have you? I asked softly. 'Cause from where I'm standing, gratitude doesn't look like getting left out of Father's Day while my money's still good. He went quiet, staring at the floor, unable to look me in the eye. James, I went on, my voice gentler now. I got a call from Sophie yesterday. His head jerked up, shock written all over his face. Victoria's sister? Why'd she reach out to you? 'Cause she's seen this playbook before, with their stepdad. I walked him through my talk with Sophie, watching his face shift from doubt to confusion to something like realization hitting home. When I got to the part about the anniversary party that never happened, he went pale as a ghost. No way that's true, he mumbled. Victoria said she called you. Said you were too tied up, that you had some book club thing with Aunt Margaret. I never got a call, James, and I haven't been to a book club in forever. James shot to his feet, pacing the living room, pausing now and then to look at a piece of proof, the list of ditched plans, the bank statements showing all the money I'd sent, the texts between Victoria and her buddies where she called me her money tree. I just don't get it, he said at last, his voice cracking like he was on the verge of tears. Why would she pull this? Folks who play these games do it to hold the reins, I said softly. And sometimes, it's about cashing in. James slumped back onto the couch, his face buried in his hands like the world was crashing down. I've been so damn blind. My chest ached seeing him like that. He was still my boy, and watching him hurt cut me deep. I slid over next to him, resting a careful hand on his shoulder. You ain't blind, James. People like that are slick, they pull strings, rewrite the story, and drive wedges. It's not on you. He lifted his head, eyes rimmed red. But I took her side over you, Dad. How can you even look at me after that? I gave his shoulder a firm squeeze. Ain't nothing to hold against you. You loved her, trusted her. That's what decent folks do. We sat there quiet for a few minutes, the heavy truth settling between us like dust after a storm. Finally, James spoke up, his voice steadier now. So what's next? That was the question that had been eating at me all night. Where do we go from here? Could we patch things up? Could James break free from Victoria's web? That's up to you, I said, choosing my words carefully. I can't tell you how to handle your marriage, that's your call. But I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm done bankrolling your life, not 'cause I don't care, but 'cause it's not good for either of us. He nodded, slow and deliberate. I get it. And I wouldn't ask you to keep doing it. He swallowed hard, hesitating. I gotta face Victoria. Lay out what I know. A jolt of worry hit me. Tread lightly, son. When you shine a light on people like her, they can get nasty. What else can I do? He asked, locking eyes with me. I can't keep living in her lies. Before I could say more, his phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. It's Victoria. She's been tracking my phone. Wants to know why I'm at your place. What are you gonna say? James stood up, a new kind of fire in his stance. The truth, that I'm here talking to my dad. That I've seen proof of her games. That things ain't staying the same. His phone buzzed again, more urgent this time. Then again, and again. She's calling now, he said, flashing me the screen. I'll take it outside. I gave a nod, watching him step out onto the porch, shutting the door behind him. Through the window, I saw his shoulders square up as he picked up, his free hand waving as he talked, like he was laying it all out. A few minutes later, he hung up and just stood there, staring out at the road. When he came back in, his face was pale but set like stone. She's on her way, he said. Says it's all a big mix-up, that she can clear it up. My gut twisted with nerves. You want me here when you two talk? James took a deep breath, then gave a sharp nod. Yeah. It's time we all deal with the truth, face to face. As we waited for Victoria to show, I braced myself for the showdown coming. I wasn't fool enough to think this would wrap up clean or easy, but for the first time in years, it felt like me and my boy were finally on the same team. The screech of tires out front told us Victoria had arrived before her car even came into view. She burst through my front door without so much as a knock, her perfect hair a little messy, her eyes blazing with fury. She stopped dead when she saw the evidence laid out across my living room, the bank records, the timeline of her schemes, the screenshots of her social media flexing. What's all this? She snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Her eyes flicked between me and James. What kind of lies you feeding him? James stood tall, his frame stiff. Not lies, Victoria, the truth, or at least what I've pieced together so far. The truth? She let out a laugh, but it was cold, no warmth in it. You mean his twisted take on things? Come on, James, you know how your dad spins stories. I stayed in my seat, watching her pull the same tricks Sophie warned me about, dodging, pointing fingers, making you question your own head. I talked to Sophie, James said, his voice low but steady. Victoria's face twitched, shock, then rage. Sophie? That two-faced little, she caught herself, smoothing her expression into one of fake hurt. Sophie's always had it out for me. Anything she told you is pure fiction. Is this made up? James asked, waving a printout of texts between Victoria and her pal, ones where she called me her money machine, and bragged about training James to pick her over his old man. Victoria's face went white as a sheet. How'd you get your hands on those? Sophie sent them to Dad, James said. Turns out you two share an iCloud account. She's seen it all, Victoria. For a second, Victoria looked like she'd been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Then her expression turned to stone. So what? I was just blowing off steam with a friend. Everybody does that. Blowing off steam? James echoed, his voice thick with disbelief. You wrote, word for word, Tom will keep covering the mortgage as long as we act like he matters. Once the house is paid off, we can ditch him for good. Victoria's eyes narrowed to slits. You had no business digging through my private texts. And you had no business messing with my bond with my dad, James fired back, his voice getting louder. You had no right to lie about phone calls and invites, to twist his words, to milk him for money while shoving him out of our lives bit by bit. Victoria's whole vibe changed in a flash. Tears pooled in her eyes, and her shoulders drooped like she was the victim. I was just trying to keep our marriage safe, she said in a shaky whisper. Your dad's always had it out for me, always tried to drive a wedge between us. I finally spoke up, keeping my tone steady. That's not how it was, Victoria. I opened my arms to you, welcomed you into the family. I backed you both with money and support. All I ever wanted was to be part of your world. She spun on me, her sad act vanishing faster than a cheap magic trick. You think your cash gives you the right to run our lives, to call the shots? My dad never tried to run us, James cut in. He was helping us because we asked him to. He stopped the mortgage payments. Because he's the manipulative one. Victoria snapped, her voice sharp as a knife. If that ain't control, what is? It's a line in the sand, I said plainly. One I should have drawn years ago. Victoria's face twisted with fury. You've poisoned him against me, she hissed. You and Sophie with your pack of lies. Nobody had to turn me against you, James said, sounding bone-tired. You did that all on your own, every scheme, every lie, every time you tried to erase my dad from our lives while still cashing his checks. Victoria's eyes darted around the room, like a trapped animal hunting for a way out. This is insane. I'm outta here. She looked at James. You coming or not? Her question hung there, simple but heavy, carrying the weight of their whole marriage. James took a deep breath. No, Victoria. I'm staying put. Those 3 words seemed to ripple through the quiet room. Victoria's eyes went wide, like she couldn't believe her ears. You're picking him over me? After all we've got together? I'm picking the truth, James said, his voice solid for the first time since he got here. And the truth is, our marriage was built on your lies. Victoria stumbled back a step, like his words had hit her square in the chest. Then her face turned cold, calculating. Fine, she spat. Stay with Daddy. But this ain't over. She jabbed a polished nail at me. And you? You're gonna wish you hadn't started this. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows shook. The roar of her car starting and peeling away cut through the heavy silence she left behind. James dropped onto the couch, his face buried in his hands. How did I miss it? He muttered. It was right there, all along. I sat down next to him, resting a hand on his back. Don't beat yourself up, son. She's a pro at this game. He looked up, eyes red and raw. What do I do now? That was a tough one, with no simple fix. That's your call, I said carefully. But no matter what road you take, I'm in your corner, even after all this. Even after I bought her lies over you? After I let her push you away? You're my boy, I said, plain and simple. That's never gonna change. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of lawyer meetings, gut-wrenching talks, and hard choices. James crashed in my spare room for a bit while he sorted out his next move. Victoria wouldn't budge from their house, claiming he'd left her high and dry. One day she'd be begging for a second chance with tears in her eyes, the next she'd be tearing into his character like a vulture. 3 days after our big showdown, I got a certified letter from some lawyer, threatening to sue me for causing emotional distress and meddling in their marriage. I passed it to my attorney without a word. A week later, James filed for separation. The very next day, Victoria cleaned out their joint bank account. Through it all, I watched my boy wrestle with the betrayal that had shaped his marriage. Some days, he was furious, at Victoria, at himself, even at me sometimes for not raising the alarm about her sooner. Other days, he was drowning in doubt, wondering if he was doing the right thing. Here's the reworked version of the next part of your story, rewritten sentence by sentence per your guidelines. I've preserved the core meaning and details, restructured each sentence, used varied vocabulary, maintained a conversational tone as a simple American guy, added depth where possible, and ensured it's natural and clear for an AI to voice. Each sentence corresponds to the original. I've also shifted the narrative to first person from the perspective of a simple American man, as requested, while keeping the emotional weight and context intact. Maybe I oughta try to fix things, James said one night as we sat out on the porch, the crickets chirping around us. Ain't marriage supposed to last forever? Marriage needs trust and respect to hold up, I told him. Only you can figure out if you two can rebuild that. He didn't say much after that, just sat there thinking. Come morning, he was on the phone with a divorce lawyer. The worst blow came when Victoria started spreading lies among their shared buddies. She spun a tale that James had been unfaithful, that I'd schemed to break them up out of spite, and that we'd plotted to leave her penniless. Some folks bought her story. James lost buddies he'd known since high school. People would dodge him in the grocery store, crossing the aisle to avoid a run-in. The community group they used to go to together told him to find somewhere else until the dust settled. I never thought she'd sink this low, James said, shaken by how vicious she'd turned. When folks like that lose their grip, they come out swinging, I explained. They gotta rewrite the script so they're the ones who got wronged. It hurt like hell to see my boy go through that mess, but every day, I could see him getting tougher, more sure of his choice, more clued into the tricks that used to blind him. A month after he filed for separation, James got a text from Sophie, "Hang in there. The truth always finds a way out." 2 days later, we figured out what she was hinting at. A year later, I was out in my backyard, trimming the rosebushes while the morning sun warmed my shoulders. The past 12 months had been a wild ride, rough at times, freeing at others, but in the end, it patched us up. A car rolled into my driveway, and I looked up to see James step out, holding a little gift bag and sporting a grin that actually reached his eyes, something I hadn't seen in ages. "Happy Father's Day," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. "You didn't forget," I said, my throat catching as emotion welled up. "Forget? No way. I booked us a table at Antonio's for 1 p.m. That work for you?" I nodded, too choked up to get words out. After all we'd been through, these small things, a hug, a dinner plan, him just being there, hit me harder than he could ever know. We settled onto the porch swing, like we used to when he was a kid, sipping lemonade and swapping stories on hot afternoons. "Got some news," James said, a nervous spark in his voice. "The divorce is done. It's official." I gave his hand a squeeze. "How's that sitting with you?" He thought it over for a second. "Relieved, mostly. A little sad it came to this, but free, you know?" The divorce had been a nasty fight, like they often are. Victoria dug in her heels, demanding the house, alimony, even trying to get my money written into the settlement. Her demands were so wild that her own lawyer finally told her to dial it back. The game changer came 4 months after James filed. Victoria's friend Rachel, fed up with the cruel lies about me and James, came clean with screenshots of chats showing Victoria's cold-blooded plan to bleed us dry while cutting James off from his family. "She said she picked you on purpose," Rachel told us, "'cause she knew you'd shell out cash to help, and she figured you'd be easy to play since you'd do anything for James." With that proof, the divorce tipped hard in James's favor. The house got sold, the money split fair and square, and Victoria's demands for more support got tossed out. "Got one more thing to tell you," James said, snapping me out of my thoughts. "I put an offer on a condo. It's small, just a 1-bedroom, but it's mine." "Well, mine and the bank's," he added with a little chuckle. "That's awesome, son," I said, genuinely stoked for him. "Where's it at?" "About 20 minutes from here. Close enough for us to hang out regular, but far enough for both of us to have some space." I nodded, appreciating how he'd thought it through. Over the past year, we'd both put in the work to rebuild what we had, setting it on stronger ground. I'd laid down firm rules about not footing his bills, and he'd respected that, picking up extra shifts to save for his down payment instead of leaning on me. "There's something else you should know," James said, his face turning serious. "I've been seeing a therapist for a few months now." "That's great," I said softly. "I'm proud of you for doing that." He nodded. "It's helping me figure out how I got sucked into Victoria's games, why I was an easy mark. And," he paused, like he was choosing his words careful, "how my relationship with you tied into it." I stiffened a bit, not sure where he was going with this. "Not like you're thinking," he said quick, reading my face. "It's just, I always felt like I had to be perfect for you, to make up for Mom walking out, to prove all your sacrifices weren't for nothing." Victoria sniffed out that weak spot and used it against me. I took a deep breath, feeling my own regrets bubble up. I never meant to put that kind of weight on you. I know, he said, his voice gentle. But I felt it anyway. And when Victoria came along, telling me I was good enough just as I was, that I deserved everything without busting my tail for it, it was like a drug. His words stung, but they also mended something. I'm sorry if I ever made you think you weren't enough, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You didn't, he said, reassuring me. But I'm learning that sometimes we carry stuff, like a kid from a broken home thinking they gotta be flawless to keep the parent they've got left from bailing too. We sat there for a moment, the swing creaking under us, both of us lost in thought. Anyhow, James said, his tone lifting, the therapist says we're both doing all right, especially since we're talking straight with each other now. Damn right we are, I agreed. The past year had taught us to lay things out plain, say what we need, what's bugging us, instead of bottling it up or guessing. James reached into the gift bag and pulled out a small, flat package wrapped in blue paper. This is for you, he said. Go on, open it. I peeled back the wrapping and found a framed photo, me and James at his high school graduation, both of us grinning like we'd won the lottery. It was the last picture of us before Victoria came into the picture, the last time things felt simple. Found it while I was packing, he said. Thought you might want it. My eyes got misty as I ran my fingers over the frame. It's just right, I managed to say. Later, as we drove to the restaurant, I thought about how far we'd come. Last year's Father's Day, when I'd been shut out, had kicked off a chain of events that tore us down but ended up building us back stronger. Word got back through old friends that Victoria had moved to a new city and was already cozying up to some rich business guy. I didn't take any joy in it, just hoped the new fella would spot her tricks before getting burned like James did. At the restaurant, James raised his glass for a toast. To fresh starts, he said. And to the toughest guy I know. I smiled, clinking my glass against his. To the truth, I added, and to knowing what we're worth. As we dug into our meal, swapping stories and tossing around ideas for what's next, it hit me that what I'd thought was the end, ripping up that mortgage check and laying down a line, had really been a starting point. It kicked off a journey to take back my say, my financial freedom, and, most of all, my bond with my boy. We'd both picked up some hard-earned wisdom. James learned how to spot manipulation and cherish real connections. I figured out how to set boundaries that didn't bend and realized love don't mean footing the bill or swallowing pain in silence. That check I tore up a year back felt like a quiet act of defiance at the time. Looking back, it was a stand for my own worth that sent ripples through both our lives, changing us for the better. On the drive home, James piped up, "You ever wish you hadn't canceled that check?" I mulled it over for a second, then shook my head. Nah. It was one of the toughest calls I ever made, but it had to happen. He nodded, like he was turning it over in his mind. I reckon it pulled us both out of the fire. As the sun dipped low, splashing the sky with orange and purple streaks, a calm settled deep in my bones. We weren't just father and son tied together by duty and old memories anymore. We were two grown folks choosing to stick by each other, respecting each other's limits, and knowing each other's value. I'd been hushed for a while, but never broken. And by finding my voice again, I'd helped my boy find his too.